Okay. Also sold the record label.
Truthseeker and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the Truth Seeker podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark's at it!
Streaming live at truthseeker.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark's at it stuff!
And now, your host, Truth Seeker.
Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, Truth Seeker. This is the Truth Seeker Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me. Numbers are growing, so all the new people, man, who hanging out with us and are getting some inspiration through this podcast, you guys are finding it as a form of ministry. Everybody's reaching out. Like the messages that I'm getting in my inbox on a daily basis lets me know that something I'm doing is working, whatever this formula is. And I don't think it's anything about me. I don't think it's even much about the guest, who I like to kind of network with people, but I think it's more about just showing up and being real and being genuine and having sometimes the hard conversations to kind of pull the veil back a little bit and let you guys see what goes into the Christian life, the spiritual life at that, and just be open with people and let, you know, because sometimes people try to judge me or the guests that I have on here by whatever type of content they put out, and they don't really get to hear the story, like what goes on in the day-to-day. And so we like to kind of take some of that mystique away and just be real, just be genuine with these conversations and be candid. And I found out that that's working, just to be authentic and to be who God called you to be, versus trying to have this image or this persona that is, you only let people see this one side of you. And so I'm excited to be here with you guys. Thank you guys for all the support and the messages and the love in the inbox. Thank you guys for supporting me on Patreon, man. Everybody knows that this show is free to consume, but it's not free to produce. There's a lot of money that goes into this of maintaining it and running it and all that good stuff. So everybody who's supporting on Patreon, www.patreon.com/truthseeker. Thank you guys for supporting. Some of the newest people supporting this week who just come on, I'm going to give a shout out to Tim Boggs, Amanda Weidman, Louis Rivas, Jason Floor, Amber Oderling. I know I butcher these names every time, man. But you know what? Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We had a good session Thursday night. We do a discipleship session every Thursday night, and patrons get access to that. That's just where we hang out and discuss different topics and pray together, worship together, all that good stuff. So we had a good first go this last Thursday. So if you want to get access to that by becoming a Patreon at any level, you get access to that. So you get access to my entire discography, which is like 10 plus albums, as well as all the new music that I'm working on. I'm uploading everything to Patreon. So head on over there. Everybody's asking me for new music. Trust me, there's a bunch already over there. Thank you guys for the support. It means the world. Today's guest is someone who has been doing this for a very long time. When I came into the game years ago doing Christian rap music, this person was already established and already had platforms and for artists like myself to come on and promote our work, and for us to come on and actually network together. It was pretty cool back in the day. I want to talk a little bit about some of those early days today, but this person has been a pioneer in Christian rap music. This person is responsible for some of your favorite artists who's out there right now. They have a platform because of the work that this guy has done, and he's a rapper himself, and he's coming out of retirement, and we're going to talk about it today. So welcome to the show, Tre9. What's going on, my brother?
Hey, man, glad to be with you, man. I love your backdrop.
Hey, thanks, bro. I love yours too. The desk is a nice, the wardrobe is a nice touch.
Yeah,
So.
you can go through there and enter into
Narnia,
yeah,
Kingdom of Heaven.
I bet yours ain't that cool.
Yeah, shoot, look at mine. Mine is Narnia. Look at it.
Yours is
It's colors
Narnia,
and
right.
symbols and shapes and stuff.
It's nice, very
No doubt,
nice,
bro. Hey, man, thanks for coming on to hang out with me, man. A lot to talk about. You got a lot going on right now. Before we get to what you're bringing to the table now, I want to rehash some old memories, man, and talk about some of the early days, bro, just to kind of build a foundation about who you are. Some people have no idea who you are who are watching this, but then there's people who are day one people who are watching this, and then there's people who are just coming into Christian hip hop, and you know what I'm saying? I guess they've never done their homework. But before Rapzilla, before Jam the Hype, before HopeBeat.net, all of these platforms, there was a website or forum, I guess it started off as a forum, called thesouth.com, man. Thesouth.com was huge back in the day. Talk a little bit about those early days and what thesouth.com was.
So, yeah, like you said, it started out as a forum for Houston artists to unify and kind of have one hub for all their websites. That didn't really play out the way it was planned, and eventually the owner of thesouth.com, who I was kind of partnered with in it, Richard Douglas, he had passed it over to me before he passed away, and I partnered with a guy named Z, who was a phenomenal web designer. And we just wanted to do a website that would promote Christian hip hop, news, stories, events, everything Christian hip hop, and take it to the next level. We wanted a website that was quality. So eventually thesouth.com became, your number one news source for Christian hip hop. It was huge. It was big. I mean, we were seeing so many numbers just climb with people logging in and being exposed to Christian hip hop. Instagram and Snapchat, all that really wasn't out. So
I don't think MySpace was out at the time.
Good thought. But it was the place you found Christian hip hop. We had the bus shop there. You bought Christian hip hop. Nowadays, you have such at the touch of your fingers, you can access anything. You really don't need a media site like the South was. However, we did eventually come to a point where it was becoming such a burden. We had, you really had to have a super love for that, because you would see what would go on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
You would see kind of the greed or the selfishness, the pride, the self-centeredness of music. And you had to really have a high tolerance for that, to say, you know what, I'm gonna work hard, stay up all night, publish an article, write articles to put out, some people who will never care about it or appreciate it.
Yeah.
And while it had a lot of positive benefits and people loved the South,
Yeah.
we got the offer to sell it to Jam the Hype. We jumped on it because I wanted to go do Eyes on Me Inc., the nonprofit organization that started in 2008. And Z wanted to go on and pursue other career options in gaming. So he does a gaming website now.
That's awesome. Yeah, dude, those early days was an awesome way for artists to connect, to kind of connect before social media with their favorite artists. I mean, I was a fan of Christian hip hop music, and I was able to come on there and get into the discussion, and then I started doing it. So the early days, man. I remember SOCOM on there. I remember hearing,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, some of his first music. Mike Shelton was a big, you know what I'm saying, user of thesouth.com, and I was able to connect and work with those guys and many other people to connect through that, man. So
We were
go ahead.
we took, you know, one of the things with me is I've always, you know, not been a respecter of persons or, you know, their platforms. I always considered everyone on an even playing field, and no matter the quality of their music, because I saw them as people that were trying to, you know, minister the gospel. So me and Z always said, you know what, we want to give the little guy the upper hand, as
Yeah.
well as the big guy his props. And so we maintained a balance of artistry there. There was no politics involved. It wasn't if you paid us more. It wasn't if you rubbed elbows with us the right way. It wasn't if, you know, for us, it was, we're going to represent Christian hip hop in its fullness, the good side, the ugly side, the weak, the strong. And that was what we set out to do. And when it became a competitive thing with other websites, and we kind of saw some of the artistry. I mean, some of the artists began to lock arms and get these, private agreements with others. It was just such a turnoff to me. And I was like, man, I'm not in this to compete for business. I'm in this to spread the gospel through Christian hip hop. And God knew our distaste was starting to happen, and he sent a blessing for us to kind of exit, you know, on a positive note.
Yeah. And that's good too, man. Knowing you and, you know what I'm saying, what you do in the, I guess we can even call it Christian entertainment industry, because there is the entertainment side to the music there, and people want to say that it's just ministry. It is, but there's a huge ministry in the entertainment, because there's just so much influence there. So seeing you move in that for years and be there, and you're still here. You haven't left. You haven't gone anywhere. You took a hiatus for a couple of years. We'll talk a little bit about that. But just to see your character, and it wasn't something that got to your head, or you were a superstar, even with like numbers and fame and things like that came. It's always been about ministry for you, man. So talk a little bit about like why you got started dealing with Christian hip hop, or even you know what I'm saying, trying to rap or put out music to begin with, as far as where it comes from, the ministry perspective.
You know, all throughout junior high school, for me, I would write rhymes. And when I gave my life to Christ after high school, I was 18 years old, and I was like, what am I going to do with this rapping thing that I was already recording an EP, very explicit, very foul, you know, nothing you would expect from me, for sure. But when God changed my life, I remember thinking, man, I'm gonna have to do something positive, because when I listened to Christian hip hop, there was just a few artists out, and it sounded corny. You know, it was behind about 10 years from the mainstream, and I was like, you know, I'm gonna just do positive rap. Well, it wasn't too long after that, my lyrics were, you know, about stories that related to God and things like that. So I started rapping for God, and I said, you know, man, maybe I can, you know, blaze a new trail. You know, every Christian rapper early on thought they were the first Christian rapper. And we found out quickly in our city that there was Nuwan, there was Rascal, you know, there was a whole little community. And I said, man, there's no labels really to sign with. Of course, there was Grapetree Records, there was Syntax Records, and a few others. But I just decided, man, you know, I'm gonna start my own label. And I started Much Love Records in 1998. And everything that I noticed was lacking in Christian hip hop, I could either cry about it, complain about it, find some other avenue, or do it myself. And it just so happens God blessed me to be able to kind of create a pathway myself and open up the doors for many artists across the United States and even the world, but more focused on the United States. And then in my city, I always wanted to blaze a trail for us to have a platform for this music to reach people. That was always my passion. It was never about my talent being so great, or the artists on my label having such great talent that we would sell a bunch of records, get famous. It was always this music versus that music, the option of listening to explicit music that tears people down, that degrades women, that promotes drugs, violence, and, you know, sex before marriage and things like that, or this wholesome music that would, you know, deter people from that stuff as well as help them get a relationship with God. It's always been about that for me. And so when that's your perspective, you really don't get caught up in the greed of the industry or the selfishness of the industry or playing the political games or showing favoritism and things like that. And all I had to do was, how do I navigate so this gets exposed more, you know, without losing myself in the industry. So early on, there wasn't a lot to lose yourself in. We're talking before Lecrae and Reach Records and all that success. So I began putting on award shows in our city, since the Doves and the Stellars wouldn't recognize us. I began, you know, putting on, going to Holy Hip Hop in Atlanta, you know, award shows, and going to Tampa to Flavor Fest and supporting others. And that's kind of how I became the point person for Houston. It's just because I really had a heart and a passion to see Christian hip hop popular in the world in order to better the lives of people. And so that made that naturally created a platform for me to be influential. Whether or not that's gotten lost today, you know, we could talk about that later, but I think there is a distinction between ministry and industry that's clear.
There's a couple people who I see who are handling it really well. They're doing it really good. And it's just a couple that I see, honestly. But so because it's part of it. Like, eventually you have these people who start out from like a good place, and I'm speaking from experience too. I've been there. I've been, you know, I've said the prayer, God, I'm going to perform for these 3 people as if it was 10,000, and I will always do that. Like, I'll always give it my all. I've said those prayers, and I meant them, and I mean them, right? But eventually you start out from this honest place, but money does get involved. Crowds do get involved, and the applause of men is intoxicating. So what was the place for you? Maybe you've always been good with money. Maybe you had other people handle the money, but where does it come off to? Like, we're making phone calls. Hey, can I come perform at your church? You don't have to pay us nothing. Just let us come. We'll sell CDs and we'll minister to the youth. Versus, okay, now, hey, we're going to give you $500, $1,000 to come, and there's other people and everybody wants the money. Like, what does, because I mean, that's going to come. If you're doing this, the money eventually is going to come. People start, I don't want any money. Well, everybody around you is making money. It costs money to make music and to travel and expenses. How do you navigate in the early years or early days of making money doing ministry in general, not even Christian hip hop, just ministry in general?
Well, just remembering the fact that Christian hip hop was so rejected early on by the church. We were fortunate enough, if there was a pastor or a youth pastor willing to allow it in their church. And so early on, it was take what you can get. I remember in Houston, we had a place called Club Glory to Glory. They had rock music. They had b-boy battles. They had us Christian hip hop guys, and it created a little platform, just a little bitty platform where we could get together and do this and talk about, man, how do we get these churches to let us in? Man, how do we get some of the radio shows to play us? And well, that was a 10-year, 10-year conversation. But eventually it did come to a point where it was like, okay, we're accepted now, but now we need money because it's taken 10 grand to make an album. It was a lot more expensive back then to make an album than today. Yeah.
Videos even too, right?
Absolutely. Videos, everything. Because anybody can get a camera that's digital and say, I'm going to make a video today, but not necessarily going to be good. Same thing with studios. You could have a studio in your home in a little corner.
Yeah.
But spending 10 grand an album thinking, how am I going to make this money back? We started to see Christian bookstores open up distribution for Christian hip hop. And so the number one aim of a record label like mine was get distribution, get it in the stores. So it's accessible to consumers to buy. That doesn't even matter today to be in a store because it's all. And so CDs, I had cassettes. I mean, I still have some cassettes. It's more like memorabilia now. But we used to print up cassettes for Grape Tree Distribution when they gave us a shot. And that was the aim, get it in the store. If you did that, you were pretty much successful as a Christian label, whether you sold or not. That's how you would generate revenue. But the other way was, you do a show, you wanted to be paid for it. And so you walk the fine line between, am I going to do this for free for exposing it to their youth group so they can hear the gospel and be exposed to Christian hip hop? Or do they need to pay me, because they're paying other guest speakers.
Yeah.
They're paying these other. And so I always had to maybe make the ask, could you do an honorarium? We call it an honorarium or a love offering.
Yeah. Sounds better.
Yeah.
Hey man, I charge 700,
Exactly. Yeah. But there did come a time where right now I put out 3 albums, and on that 3rd album, you're like, okay, hey, I charge 500 to do an event. Yeah. And they might say, well, we could do 200, and I'm there. You know what I'm saying? I just want you to value the.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it became an issue of value versus I got to get my paper.
Yep.
You feel me?
Yep.
I was fortunate enough. And so I'm from my perspective, I had a janitorial business that I started from the ground up, and my janitorial company every year would become more and more successful. I was my own business, my own boss. And so I could determine my income. So I at least had the money coming in to sustain my label and my family.
Yeah.
Guys that didn't have that luxury and privilege, it was a little bit more desperate for them.
Yeah.
Where your faith in God, your trust in God, your reliance on him, you being able to hear from the Holy Spirit that you're supposed to be doing it full time really made a difference. Because if God wasn't providing for the artist, and they're losing their relationship with their wife is rough, they can't pay their bills, it became really hard for artists early on to make it, Go ahead, man.
Yeah, some of this is what I'm saying, for many artists, let's be real, it's a pipe dream. It's a childhood dream, a childhood fantasy. That, what I'm saying, they may not be called to do it, or then again, they may be called to do it, right? But it gets into this weird place early on, and maybe most of us have to do this, but early on, like, you would spend your income tax money or just money out of your paycheck to buy CDs or whatever. And so I seen in a lot of people's lives around me, because I was kind of like the go-to guy in Mobile. I would set up the shows. I would book. I'd rent the skating ring out. I would do those, So, but I would see people put their families and their bills on the back burner to invest into their music, whether it was to buy a bunch of CDs and just or clothing for a video shoot or whatever the case was, man. And it's like I think it should get to a place where, like, your ministry or your hobby, we can even say hobby in some of those cases. Let's don't be afraid to call it what it is. Your hobby, you're not taking from your family to support your hobby, what you love to do or you enjoy doing. Eventually, I think the goal is to kind of get to a place financially where it pays for itself. Like, if you're paying for a feature, let's say some artists charge for features, you don't have to take away from your family to actually purchase this feature to go on your album, but you can actually make album sales or do shows or sell merch or whatever to have a budget. Okay, now I have money that, and that's where I got to a place that was okay, that I didn't have to, hey babe, can I have $100 to get this mixer? I need the mixer, whatever. So like whatever whatever I was putting out had already come in through the ministry or whatever. Because a lot of people get to this place, man, that where they just start spending money, and then again, they may not even be called to do it,
Yeah, for sure. Well, you mentioned the word calling, and I used to wrestle with that because I was, I saw the calling to be apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. Mm-hmm. I think it's a term we kind of use loosely, but artists would say, I'm called to do this, and it wasn't something that you could really make a living off of back then. I mean, we know T-Bone did, we know Gospel Gangsters did, even today, I think we would think there's more people making a living off of it.
Yeah, it's very little, yeah.
But there's still very little. It's always, in Christian hip hop, it's always been this one label or one group of people that kind of made the money off of it and made the living off of it, for the most part, at least comfortable living and
Yeah.
an amount of money. And it was that way before, when it was, Goatee Records and Gospel Gangsters and, called Cross Movement Records and then Reach Records now. And, you got a few under but it's
Grape
very
Tree. Early days of Grape Tree.
Before all that, right?
Yeah.
They broke the mold, for Christian hip hop and making money. But when it comes to industry and ministry, those lines can be very blurry. So I always tell even artists that I disciple and raise up, like, speak of them in two different veins, because when you start intertwining them, you mess things up. Lyrical content, the image that you uphold, the revenue side of things, the marketing, promotion, they fall in one of these two categories. They're not always intertwined. For instance, lyrics, Christian hip hop lyrics. If you're boasting in your skills, that's more industry, because that ain't ministry. But every rapper boasts on their seat. I don't care who you are, you Lecrae or anybody. There's some boasting going on, but it's more of a hip hop acceptable thing.
Yeah.
You don't judge a person's heart by that. Now, I got to have the latest Jordans, and I got to take this picture in front of this car, and I got to look fly. That's industry. Ministry would be, I'm going to deliver this message so that it touches someone's life and points them to see Jesus. I'm going to make Jesus famous. And so there's moves that an artist has to make to advance his career in the industry. And then there's the ministry side where, hey, I want to make sure my music impacts people's lives. Very few can combine those two. They say they do, but very few can combine those two. Mm-hmm. And when you do, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. But it's very difficult.
Talking about everybody being a gospel rapper. I remember, early on it was just a couple people we seen, and then now it's like everybody raps. And it's, whether it's Christian or not, everybody's a rapper. And I mean, Logan Paul and Jake Paul, the two, YouTube vloggers, they make rap songs, and they get millions of views off of it just because of their platform. It doesn't mean that they're rappers or they're good at it or whatever the case is, but everybody's a rapper now. So when I would So when I would go to a lot of churches early on, you're like, hey, my uncle raps, and it's like an old man gets up there, he raps, and then they let the little babies rap. Like, everybody would rap, and we'd be doing this show where for you it's your ministry, and then it's like all these people are rapping. And then I talked about the applause of men can be intoxicating, right? There's this dilemma that I found. I'm gonna get your take on it, man. Because you can get up there at a church. You're not going to get booed at a church. I don't care if you're the worst gospel rapper, if you can't even rap. There's no, like, if you suck really bad, you get up there, you perform, you do it before God, you meant it with all your heart, you'll get a standing ovation, you'll get an applause from the entire congregation. If you go to a church and they got a lot of people, even a few people, and you get an applause, you're like, hey, it's like a false sense of security, it's a false sense of comfort. Like, hey, I may have a future in this. This may be everywhere. Every time I touch the mic, they applaud. You know what I'm saying? So there's this weird sense of whether it's, I don't know the word, false sense of security, but if you go to a club, if you go to a regular secular club and you try to do that, they're going to boo you off the stage if you don't have talent or anointing, whatever you want to call it in our case. But talk a little bit about that, man. It's because it's oversaturated, and there's that aspect, man. A lot of people, I don't think it's healthy, man. I don't think it's healthy for somebody who isn't good to applaud them. It's almost like everybody gets a trophy. You know what I'm saying? This whole culture now where you get a trophy even though you lost just for showing up, just so we don't hurt your feelings.
Yeah. So what's the solution to that? I mean, we've always seen guys who feel that they can rap, get up and really make Christian rap look bad, and I've always kind of leaned on the side of, bless his heart. But there was a season where I was like, okay, this is hurting us. Yeah. And you come to a point where you're like, am I going to be a part of a solution for this, or am I going to be the complainer, or am I going to tear people down? I've always wanted to be a part of the solution. And there were times where I was like, let's create an alliance. We had the Houston Holy Hip Hop Alliance, so we could bring them together, build a relationship, and maybe either cultivate their rap to be better, or just let them know, like, your music quality isn't good enough. I think early on we had a lot of workshops, we had a lot of seminars that addressed the quality of the music. I don't see a lot of those discussions today. I feel like one of my roles today now is to come back and put a lot of those measures back in place, starting with my city of Houston, because we had a lot of that. And we used to talk about, if your rhyme is whack, if your music is whack, if your production quality is whack, then you probably should wait. I used to tell artists, why you create an album of 20 songs when they're all poorly mixed, poorly mastered, terrible beats, when you could have created one song and maybe made a name for yourself that was done right. And I used to really push that, but it was more solution oriented. It was less tearing a person down. So what do we do with artists who don't have the talent, but they're doing this? I think it's the same old, go to your brother and try to have that conversation.
Yeah.
If they're becoming a problem,
Yeah.
Now there's some churches and some venues that don't value Christian hip hop anyway, and they just want to throw a rapper up there, and it's not gonna have any impact whatsoever. So let them have fun and get their applause from the smaller crowd, because at the end of the day, we know today everybody knows Christian hip hop has a standard now. Everybody knows Lecrae. I think he kind of raised the bar, set the bar. So they're comparing everybody to what Reach Records has done. Andy Mineo, and now
KB.
I was thinking of the NF. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, there you go.
So the bar is really, really high now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're whack, you're probably just not going to get any attention or any fans, versus it making us look bad as a Christian hip hop industry. That mattered to us early on. But now it's like, okay, everybody knows we've arrived. I always say, like, Christian hip hop has arrived, and that was always a goal of mine, is to see it on a level playing field with our mainstream counterparts, so people could be touched and changed. So now I think it's a one-on-one thing. Go to those artists and just be like, look, man, you sound like you're rapping from the 80s, you know?
Yeah.
It's time to upgrade. And if they just get offended, then it's like, okay, well, stay in your lane and keep doing what you're doing. But if you don't get the same praise as this guy, just know I told you why. You know?
Yeah, because it's up to you to make those changes. But it could be a hard pill to swallow if you've always been applauded. You get distraught, you get mad. Oh, he's just a hater. That's the devil coming against me. You had to come to terms with reality, man. I've been more open and vocal as well. Like, I get a lot of people, sending me beats and stuff, and I'll tell them straight up, like, the beat's dope. I see the potential, but I can tell you're using the default drum kit that came with the program. Like, you're gonna have to get some new beat. You're gonna have to get some, just like a new kit. You got potential, and just tell them the truth versus like, yeah, man, I'll think about it, bro, not to hurt their feelings, and to really give the constructive criticism, whether it's with somebody's rhyming scheme. There's with anything, hard work pays off. And that's with becoming an MC, rhyming, recording, doing your own stuff. So just doing it over and over and learning. If you're really, there's people who start out whack. I actually laugh at a lot of my older stuff when I first started, bro. I don't even like to promote it. I don't like people knowing it's out there. But because I've come so far, right? You know? But I'm gonna go ahead and say this just while we got people watching live, everybody in the chat room. Give a shout out to everybody holding us down live. Phone lines are open if you want to call in and say hello to Tre9 if you have a question or you'd like to bring something to the conversation. The number's scrolling across the top of the platform. Also, it's in the description as well. And I see some chats going on in the chat room. I did see the people who called in a while ago. So people say, I don't think they're answering. We're just going to open up the lines towards the end. So call back in if you want to get in on the conversation. So with it being oversaturated and this, like, we see the Lecraes and everybody wants to be a Lecrae. Everybody wants to be a Brian Trejo at this moment, a Pyrex. But and I was joking around because I just did an interview with Quayle. I don't know if you caught that interview. I interviewed Quayle.
Man, I saw it. I want to watch it because that was interesting. The heading was interesting. I didn't know that until I saw that.
Yeah, he just he's doing secular music now. But Quayle in those early days was a part of the South and mingling with everybody. But I interviewed him, and somebody said, well, maybe he left gospel music because he's a hater. Because I'm sorry, not that he's a hater. He left gospel music because he couldn't get famous in it. And there's people who do that. I don't consider my music gospel, like gospel hip hop or whatever. But it's not because I'm not famous, but people were like making fun of him. Well, he's leaving because you're not famous, but then I've heard that argument on the other side. You're doing gospel because you couldn't make it in the secular. So that's what they come at gospel artists with, trying to step down on them. But somebody commented and said that, and I jokingly said this just as a joke, but there's some truth to it. And I said that, this quote unquote making it as a gospel artist, or a Christian artist, I said, and I was joking, but it had some weight to it. And I said the devil does the same thing he does just like in the secular. He exalts a few and makes everybody feel like they can eventually obtain that. And I said it jokingly, man, but I think it's the case, though. I think that we see the Lecraes and the Brian Trejo, and everybody's pulling from their family. They're pulling all their resources and pouring into stuff and wasting money and all kinds of stuff, wanting to do full-time ministry. I think everybody wants to do their passion full-time, right? But it's this thing that's like, I think the means in this case sometimes don't justify the ends. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm blessed since 2008 to be able to do my passion full-time, which is hip hop ministry. But it's not through record sales, CD sales, shows, things like that. There was a time where I did rely early on in my jump to being a hip hop missionary, an urban missionary.
Yeah.
I did need that little $500 show and things like that to carry me, because we had sold the South.com. I sold my cleaning company. I sold my recording studio and media business. And so I did have to dip here and there, but I was building a ministry, a nonprofit organization, which relies on the faithful support of donors and artists who desire to go into full-time ministry, or I don't know if it's ministry, it may be industry, depending on where their heart really is. Artists who desire that today, it is kind of a lure of Satan to reel them in through saying, look how big Lecrae is. Look at all the shows KB is doing. Look at Anthony. Look at NF. He's number one on, billboards. And excuse me for 1 second. I had to sneeze. Thank you. But you see that, and think about this. So as an artist myself who said, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to leave rap. My wife was sick. I had little boys I had to raise. I had to change diapers. I had to do things like that. I had Pyrex come into my life, and I was like, I can pass the baton now. I'm good. I think Christian rap has arrived. I feel like there's enough MCs, they'll be okay without me, and I had a retirement party and was done. And then, there's another story to it, but so I'm back doing an album, but not for industry purpose, for ministry purposes. I can easily see, even in my own heart, I'll look and I'll be like, well, if I post a music video, obviously I want people to see it and hope they get the message and receive it. And it's very easy to get caught up in, well, dang, this guy's video, he got 1,000 views in one day. Man, it took me 2 weeks to get 1,000 views. You can get caught up in that.
Yeah.
Even a person with a good heart, and I consider myself mature in the word, very easy. And I wouldn't be so hard on myself as an individual out there if you do that, if you're, follower watching. But I would say that we got to always go back to our identity in Christ. We're not who the numbers say we are. We're not who our bank account, our Christian hip hop bank account says we are. We're who God says we are, and we're a new creation, and we're an ambassador, and he gave us a ministry of reconciliation and a message of reconciliation. This all comes from 2 Corinthians 5:17-21. And we really have to know our identity, I think, to become an artist in Christian hip hop. because it will consume you. It will make you hate, music ministry. It will make you get bitter with others. It will make you gossip, slander, and everything under the sun. And it might make you go back to secular music. You know what I'm saying? If you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our identity, I do this because I go to prisons, right? Let's just say I did an album because in prison, these guys, I have a captive audience and they soak everything I say up and they love it. But let's say when I get on stage next to, this new artist, Austin Lanier, that this crowd is screaming, the kids are excited.
Yeah.
Say I perform before him, he performs after me, and everybody rushes to his table and everybody wants his autograph, but they don't want mine. What's that going to do to me?
Yeah.
You really get to test your heart, and you really get to see if you're about ministry when that goes down. You really get to see how humble you are when nobody comes to your table and when nobody asks for your autograph.
Yeah.
For me, as an older, mature man, I can deal with that. But young guys coming up in the game, that's hard.
Yeah.
So be careful before you say I'm doing this for ministry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
it definitely
you might get tested.
It that comes with it too, man. And I will say that I was on the opposite end of that. Like, I made sure that just because I can do my graphic art, I can edit my videos, I can order my t-shirt, I can design my t-shirt. So when we would go yeah, exactly. So when we would go do shows early on, like, I would have the merch table with stickers and buttons and CDs and several different posters and signing them, and the other artists they'd be hating. Like, I've had them tell me, like, repent and come to me and be like, man, I want to get it like you got it. It's like, look, man, spend some money. You got to spend money to make money. If you're trying to make money, you got to put something like. And I would talk to those artists too, and they would go out and buy a new wardrobe before that show. I didn't do that, so that whole wardrobe money could have went towards some flyers. Spend $30 on flyers or whatever the case is, and to have, because I had it all. But and then when we would do the shows, I brought the crunk music. That was a big difference too, and that did breed competition of who can get the crowd the crunkest.
Right.
And there was a whole thing.
That's still an issue.
And I was really good at it. And the other artists were like, man, I wish I could move a crowd. They would tell me, because they were friends, right? But they would do it all, even from a place of envy or whatever, or see how much social media reach you get. And they do it, and they come at you from a place of envy and bitterness. Like, I got friends who are like bitter that I have reach, and I share articles or information that they don't, that doesn't line up with their theology. Because that's a big thing we can get into as well, man. There was a huge split when Lecrae and them guys got into the Reformed theology, and I come from the charismatic circles, right? And so I had a bunch of friends who became essentially disciples of Lecrae. They got into John Piper, they got into MacArthur, just because Lecrae promoted him and Lecrae was into him. And then they would see me or hear me talking about Benny Hinn or something like that, some more spiritual type of dudes or whatever. And I got love for them all at this point, but it did cause a split. Like, they're like, you know what, we can't do songs with you no more. We can't be on the stage with you because
I remember that area.
Like Benny Hinn, and it was like, oh, this is weird. Or we can't get a beat from a secular producer because he's not a Christian, and there's spirits on that beat. Like, all types of stuff, man. I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that, but I definitely lost a lot of friends over that stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, the evolving of Christian hip hop. I've seen it all, man. I mean, I remember, when gospel gangsters, it was a big argument over how you gonna be a gangster and be gospel.
Yeah.
And people used to divide over that. They still act like gangsters. And then
Seven gets it hard.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Seven too. I remember when Cross Movement had the Throne as a record label. Yeah. I've already talked to them and things about stuff like this, but we always felt isolated, no matter how pure our hearts were, from them as the elites, because there was such a high expectation of, if you're Christian rap, well, you don't do songs with secular artists. We ain't talking about nothing crunk or nothing like we trying to be theological and basically preach the Bible in our raps.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but in the South, you know, we were like trying to reach out to lost people, and we didn't want to always go that route.
Yeah.
And so there was that divide, you know, on who's preaching enough in their lyrics, who's got enough Jesus and who don't. And then now we've kind of evolved past that, and now it's kind of switched. It's like, oh no, it's cool that Lecrae is working with secular artists. I love to see the crossover and trying to reach I was doing that like 15 years ago, you know, doing songs to reach the secular market with secular artists that are famous.
But even that's debatable about that Lecrae thing, because he's got, man, that Joker caught flack. You could tell it messed with him hard. It messed with him.
Yeah.
All that flack and stuff.
He talked about losing his religion and stuff, you know. And you know, I personally, you know, love the diversity and everything if it reaches people. So, but I know that we always find a topic that we can divide over, and the charismatic, the Calvinism. Yeah. I remember that era. I kind of feel like that a lot of that has gone out the window. Now it's purely talent, skill. You know, how dope is this artist?
Who can sound like the Migos too?
Yeah. Biting. Remember when biting was an issue? Mm-hmm. You remember when we used to go, man, he's biting so and so, and you would be an outcast for that. Yeah. BBJ experienced that, you know, because BBJ sounded like Notorious B.I.G. Yeah. You know, Aesop, a friend of mine back, he sounded like Tupac. So that was an issue. Biting an issue. You could be a replica. I mean, NF sounds like Eminem. There's no question. Yeah. That's not an issue. Young kid, they don't even care about that no more. So we have to evolve with it. We have to let go of all this and that and you know, and we have to say, man, God, how can you use us to strategically reach more people with ministry of music? And how can I not be the old grumpy, you know, person complaining, wanting my old school hip hop back? You know, how can we catalyze these young men that are rapping now, these young women that are rapping now, to not lose their identity in the process and pour into them in a positive way versus tear them down because it ain't like we used to do it. That's more on what I'm on, and trying to set a standard and give them a standard with it versus say, man, you got to be like us back in the day, you know? Yeah. So to answer your question, if somebody is still doing that, you know, and, you know, remember the other thing, we communicated through message boards, and it got ugly on message boards.
I got to a point I won't even talk about that type of stuff over Messenger or Facebook. Like, you got to call me. You got to call me and have these. Yeah.
Back then, that's all we had. Yep. We didn't have Messenger. We didn't have Snapchat. We didn't have, you know, quick texting. We didn't have FaceTime. You know, so it was a message board post would just divide us all. Yeah. And now it's like everything's so quick and fast. You can settle things quickly. People could say, oh, who cares? You know, look at how many numbers he has on his following and hit. And so anything goes now. And that could be dangerous too.
Mm-hmm. Some people know, I know you mentioned it briefly, and I know you don't want to take credit. Obviously, all the credit goes to King Jesus, but you played a huge role in maybe winning Pyrex over, or essentially winning is discipling, spending time discipling Pyrex, visiting him in jail before he was ever thinking about becoming a Christian or doing Christian music for that matter. And it worked. Like, it's good, like, when the ministry works, especially somebody who's got a name out there, like, because that's the stuff you see. You don't always see the dudes who are struggling with addiction, who will never be in the limelight. But for people who are, like, who love Pyrex's music, they get ministered to from it. They follow him. He's one of the best Christian artists out there doing it right now. Talk a little bit about your relationship with Pyrex, like in the early days and even to where you are now with him.
So I think it's been 7 years that I went into the Clemens prison unit doing prison ministry, which is something that I've always loved to do. Been doing it for 20 years, going in, rapping, doing a concert. And this particular day, it was with Mike Barber Prison Ministries. We were going to walk the tanks to people who were far from God. These are guys, not the Christian, you know, the Christian
ward.
This was the gangsters. And everybody, when I would walk, I was inviting them to our concert. Now, remember, I was rocking blonde hair back then. You know, some people might have not been like, man, it's just corny white rapper, you know. But remember, once again, my heart was pure. And regardless of what my talent was like, my heart was set on reaching people. So they said, you got to go meet this guy, Pyrex. He runs with ABN and Tre9 and all them. I said, sure, I'll go meet him. Met him. I said, man, why don't you come down to the concert? He comes to the concert. He sits still. He doesn't get into the concert. He's just stone-faced looking. Afterwards, he was like, man, you know, I'd like to chop it up and do a little more, man. Let's take a picture right quick. We took a picture because we had permission to have a camera. And I wrote him after that. And we began this conversation about why he was angry with God. And I just tried to tell him to get angry with Satan because it was Satan that took his mom away. It was Satan that got him involved in drugs and got him caught up in prison. He gets out a year later, miraculously. And then we hook up. I go to Acres Homes. We take a picture, and I'm like, man, you going to rock with Tre9 or you going to rock with Tre9? He chose to rock with Tre9. For 3 years, he lived that street life, in and out of jail. I become a volunteer chaplain at the Harris County Jail. They put him on my floor. You know, we chop it up. I'm like, bro, talk to this gangster right here, a guy named Sonic that was real gangster. I said, man, listen to his story. He pours into him. Pyrex kind of hears it in his own language. He breaks down. From that point on, when his case got dismissed, he comes out. We began working out in the gym. I began discipling him and walking him through what it means to rap for the Lord. And I guess it's been, 5 years or so of doing that. And I can say that one of the proudest accomplishments in my life is what God did in his life and how God used me. It's because he's impacted so many people. I can't tell you how many people, gangsters especially, guys that are tatted up, hopeless, will hit me and say, man, I really need a guy like you in my life. Or I need you in Pyrex. I'm really inspired by your boy Pyrex. And me and Pyrex, we're friends till we die. And one thing I respect about Pyrex that many artists or many people that you've played a role in their life don't do is Pyrex will never deny my role in his life. Pyrex will never forget the moments that we had before he moved to Dallas. He'll always, it's like, and I don't need it, but he'll give this credit to me that furthers the ministry, because then people go, man, if Pyrex had a dude like this in his life, that's what I need. And they'll begin looking for a Tre9 in their life or a mentor or a big brother in their life. And so what me and him have is so special. Even though we've had disagreements, we've had moments we've divided, even though we have rough spots in our relationship, it's a beautiful picture of what could happen with somebody at the bottom, with all odds against them, with being judged to the highest degree for their looks, and a guy who has been seasoned in the church, walked with the Lord for a long period of time. It's a beautiful picture of what reconciliation looks like, and I'm proud of that story today. I wish he lived in Houston so we can still fight and close. But he doesn't. And fortunately, when people say how's Pyrex, I say, well, all I can tell you is he still raps about Jesus. He still is a loving husband, and he's still a loving father. And the Pyrex I knew before that, his wife was distraught, out of control, just didn't know what to do. His son was neglected and without a father, and his lyrics were full of filth and promoting gangs, violence, drugs, and everything else under the sun. So I would say Pyrex is doing pretty good.
I heard that, man. Somebody who definitely, he looks the role of a rapper. So I think that a lot of rappers would want to look like him or want to check out his music. I remember when I first ran into a dude locally who was tatted from head to toe. You know what I'm saying? The homie King James. I was like, this dude looks like a rapper. Let me check him out. So there's something like that. Yeah, there's something that kind of fits with the look or the lifestyle or whatever. But then again, so I think that an audience would or people who listen to hip hop or whatever, they would gravitate towards him. But then again, when he would go out to do churches in his promo pics, he's got tats on his face, his shirt's off in the promo pic and things like that. They're like, oh, this guy here. Talk a little bit about, I believe it was a concert y'all did together. And the first time he did it, he took off his shirt because he's tatted head to toe. He took off
Man.
his shirt in the church at the concert. Talk a little bit about that video clip, man.
So early on, and this, people can learn from this as you disciple guys like that from the street. When they come over, you don't say, okay, you got to stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this. I'd rather allow my baby to learn how to walk, or learn how to crawl, learn how to walk, learn how to hold the bottle. But in the beginning, you got to carry that. So I was willing. I have a good reputation in the city of Houston. So people were like, okay, I trust Trey.
Yeah.
This dude, I don't know about this dude. This dude, I don't know if his motives are right. What's he trying to do? And so they had this thing like, let's just wait and see. So when Pyrex would get on a show with me, because I'm putting him on my shows early on and getting him exposed. And I always told him, I said, when you go do these shows, bro, I'm passing the baton to you. I'm trying to get out of this rapping. You need to build your own relationships. And so he would pop his shirt off at a show. And I was like, look, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, but that's probably gonna hurt you moving forward. People aren't gonna be receptive to that over here, like in the streets. Now, when we go to the streets and it's a non-believing crowd, pop the shirt off or whatever. But if you do it over here, there's gonna be consequences. And so he did it a few times. And then at some point in our journey, someone else, I can't remember who he told me, had brought it up to him like, Pyrex, the shirt, you take it off, and let me tell you why that's not wise. And so I just kind of let it go and would tell him there's consequences. But someone else kind of watered that seed, and he finally said, you know what? I'm going to keep this shirt on. Now, as far as tattoos, that worked in his advantage on his face. People were just like, man, what does this do? What is his story? Yeah. Oh, he gotta have, and he's with Trey, so I know he's in good hands. And it became this perfect mix. So if you're out there and you're, you don't look the part of a thug or a criminal or a gangster or a rapper, but you get somebody like that, it can be very powerful. But you got to be precious and gentle. You got to take that relationship with gentleness and not try to change that person and conform your ways on them so quick, or even the Bible trying to overdo it. Give them time to grow, know when to be firm, know when to exercise grace, and let God do their work in their lives. But it was a part of a great story. People learned a lot from that.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
I'm really proud of allowing him to take his shirt off and possibly ruin my reputation, my clean reputation, but it was worth every bit of it. And I would do it again if I had to. And I do it today. I work with guys that are still the same, but
rough around the edges.
Yes.
So when people would see somebody like Pyrex or a lot of other rappers because all the rappers, they're covered in tats today. Everybody's basketball players. Everybody's covered in tats. So there would be some people from the suburbs who would see that and they want to do gospel rap. And actually, there's somebody on the line. I know they've got a question for you. Want to say hello, but I've had this conversation with this person because they don't look the part of a rapper, right? So they would look at Pyrex like, you know what? I want to reach the streets. I want to be a gospel rapper. I need tattoos. I used to think that years ago. I was like, okay, I'm in the metal scene. I'm in the hip hop scene. I want to get tattoos. I want to stretch my ears out. If I look like them, then I can reach them. I can go down there and essentially be a sheep in wolf's clothing. They think I'm one of them, but I'm really sent from God. But then it changed. You know what I'm saying? My perspective changed. And it was like, it's not if I look like them. Like that's not going to win them. It's the Holy Spirit being led and filled with the Holy Spirit and giving you the words to say to these people. I think you're a prime example. Like you just like